Hey everybody, I'm Mr. Pencil. Mr. Callahan asked me today to come and help you with the phases of the moon. So Mr. Callahan is here. He's filming this. Hey everybody. But Mr. Pencil is my name. And Mr. Callahan wanted me to teach you today because he wants you to know some things, okay? And he wants you to know lots of things about the moon phases. And so he wants you to look at your sheet first. So he's going to show you that. And he wants you to look at this sheet that you have in front of you. And he wants you to notice that over here on the right, it says sun's rays. Sun's rays. And what you want to know is today in his classroom, these windows over here are the sun's rays. And there's a volunteer. There's a volunteer. That's Mr. Kennedy. Everybody say hi, Mr. Kennedy. All right, so Mr. Kennedy is going to help us with holding some moon positions today while I'm teaching you this. We also have in the middle of the room here, we have a table that represents the earth. And I want you to kind of look at the earth on your worksheet in the middle. And I want you to do me a favor right now. What I'd like you to do is this. If the windows are over there where it says sun rays, draw the side of the earth that is dark and take your pencil and make it dark right now. Go ahead and do that. All right? By the way, sometimes Mr. Callahan today will pause the video. So if you're thinking about this table here, you notice that Mr. Callahan has got some other things set up here today. So he's got this white piece of paper that says Earth. Okay, there it says Earth. And that's the side that's facing the windows over there. So that side's lit. And then this side of the table is black. And we have this wonderful little duck over here. This is my other volunteer. This is Mr. Duck. He looks a little bit like Mr. Callahan. He's pretty cool looking, isn't he? But anyway, some of you might not like the way that duck looks, but then he kind of does look a little bit like Mr. Callahan. So the purpose of the duck is the duck can always be moved by the people who sit at the middle table. So Mr. Callahan during class is going to spray this table from time to time. And that'll help the people who sit at the middle table to move the duck when they're looking at Mr. Kennedy. So see right now how Mr. Kennedy's over there. If a person at this table was holding the duck, they would move the duck's eyes and they would make the duck look at the moon over there. And so this is one of the things that the people at that table are going to have to do. So first of all, let's see how you did on your worksheet, all right? So we're starting. This is what your earth in the middle should now look like. It should look like this. Does that make sense? The darkness is on the left side because the sun rays are over here. So now let's try to figure out, first of all, why am I teaching you this? Why is Mr. Pencil teaching you this? I'm going to show you right now why I'm teaching you this. Mr. Callahan wanted me to teach you this because I can enter the worksheet. Watch me enter the worksheet. I can go stand on the earth in the darkness. And I can look over there to position 1. So Mr. Callahan is filming this. And see, here's my eyes. And I'm going to look at the moon over there in position 1. Remember, Mr. Kennedy is over there holding the moon in position 1. And the duck is also looking at the moon in position 1. From which side? Well, the duck is on the dark side of the moon. Now, some of you at home are thinking, and in class are going, I don't have a pencil like you. Well, first of all, you need to understand not all of your pencils are my relatives. So be kind to them. I don't appreciate it when you are chewing on me and breaking me in these pencil wars. I don't like that, and neither do my relatives. So let's be respectful to my people, all right? But you have a pencil. If you don't have a pencil with this on it, this is where my eyes are. Mr. Callahan right now is going to do something that's rather interesting. I'm going to ask him a question. Mr. Callahan, will you give me a high five? Sure, Mr. Pencil. High five. Thanks. Thanks, Mr. Pencil, for asking me for a high five. You're welcome. But some of you are going, I don't have a pencil like that. My pencil looks more like this. All right. Well, this is my cousin. All right. This is one of my cousins. They're not quite as durable as us, but they're on the other side of the family. And the eyes on the pencil that are like this are where the writing is on the pencil. So you need to, when you're doing this activity, realize that you can take my cousin, All right. And you can enter my cousin by putting him into the worksheet in the darkness and then having his eyes or her eyes look at the proper moon. So right now, what you're going to do is answer this question. I want you to look at if we're looking over there at Mr. Kennedy, who has the same view as the duck in the room right now? So obviously we're looking over there at position 1. All right, we're looking at position 1. Who has the view of the duck? Well, hopefully you picked that the people who are sitting where table 5 would be, all right, which in class is right over here. These people who are sitting at this table, it's actually table 6 in my room, but on your worksheet it says 5. They have the view of the duck. All right, so Mr. Kennedy is always going to make sure. I want you to see the moon he's holding. All right, he's going to rotate it a little bit. And what you notice is that half of this moon is yellow. All right, he's always going to have the yellow facing the window. And so he's going to bring it down just a little bit because I don't want it to interfere with the poster. And right now, if you look across, what you notice is you don't see any light. You see complete darkness. So let's figure out how we're going to now use the worksheets, all right? So what we do on the worksheet is this. We're now in position 1. We're going to look at this worksheet. What you need to do right now is you need to write a couple things on your paper, all right? So the first thing you need to do is you need to write down, all right, that who can see it, we said was over here in this position. They have the view of the duck, all right? If you put your pencil on the table and you rotated your worksheet, you could look across and see what they see. Now, another thing you want to write down is this. You can't see behind this orbit line. You can never see more than half the moon. So you might want to make a note that you can't see behind this orbit line. And so when we look at this picture here, if anything, what we do first is we put the darkness in for the moon. So that's why I colored this side of the moon. So take cousin and color the dark side of the moon. Now, the other thing you want to do is this. If the light is behind the orbit line, like this one is, you want to color it orange. You also want to write yourself that note right here in this space on your worksheet. If the light is behind the orbit line, you color it orange. If the light is in front of the orbit line, you color it yellow. All right? So we just saw this moon. This is what it looks like. Now, what we also have then is a box where we draw right here what the moon actually looks like. So this moon actually looks like this. And this is called, when we see nothing but darkness, we call it a new moon. So this is a new moon. It's called a new moon because this is where the first part of the new moon cycle starts. If you read the book like I asked you to, which way does the moon orbit? All right. We're pausing the video and hopefully somebody is answering that. Did you get counterclockwise? If so, good job. Write counterclockwise right here with cousin on your worksheet. Write that the moon orbits counterclockwise. You also want to notice that there's arrows on your worksheet showing you that the moon is rotating counterclockwise. So what we're going to do now is we're going to have our volunteer rotate the moon. And notice that Mr. Kennedy is rotating counterclockwise, and he is now in what position? We're going to pause the video, and hopefully you are able to figure out which position he is in on your sheet. If you picked that he is in position 2, good. Let's have the people who are at the desk actually change the eyesight of Mr. Duck so he's now looking at the moon. So we're going to come over here. We're going to adjust the duck to look over at the moon. You're going to take cousin, which is your pencil. You're going to put him in the darkness, and you're going to have him look over at position what? What position is he in? Hopefully you said position 2. If you turn your worksheet, you will have the view of the duck. But before you do that, you have to put in your darkness line. So notice that I put in this darkness line here for you on the sheet to start you on this one. Now notice that you do have something that's in front of the orbit line that you're going to make yellow. So now we're going to go to our next little sheet here, okay? And you're going to make anything in front of the orbit line yellow. So see how Mr. Callahan beforehand, he was very nice. Mr. Callahan made these props for me. Thanks, Mr. Callahan. You're welcome, Mr. Pencil. And you see that he made this little line in front yellow. And he made the three behind it orange. Because remember, anything behind the orbit line you can't see. So let's see what that actually looks like. By the way, who has the vantage point of the duck right now? Hopefully you realize it's this spot right here. And in my room, that's this table right back here. The people here at table 7, which on the worksheet I know it says 6, but they have the view of the duck. And so what we're going to do is we're going to zoom in on that and let you see what they can see. And what you see there, okay, is a sliver of light on the right. Now, when you see that sliver on the right, that's known as what shape? All right. What does it remind you of? So I'm going to take some answers in class right now of what that reminds you of. What do you think that reminds you of when it looks like that sliver? Well, some of you hopefully came up with one of two things. Maybe you said it looks like a banana. If so, that's good. But this isn't called a banana phase. This is called a crescent. But what you also notice is that we just added light on the right. That kind of rhymes. Light from the right. Light from the right is waxing. Everybody sing it with me. Sing it with me. A light from the right is waxing. Mr. Kennedy, will you join us? A light from the right is waxing. A light from the right is waxing. A light from the right is waxing. That's right, folks. If the light is coming from the right, it's waxing. And so this one, when we draw this one, it looks like this. This is what it looks like. All right, it looks like a crescent shape on the right. And this again is called a waxing crescent. Remember, you should also write yourself a note right here on your worksheet with cousin that if the light is in front of the orbit line, we color it yellow. If it's behind the orbit line, we color it orange. What you're going to do is you're going to come over to this position while Mr. Kennedy is rotating. And the class is going to tell me where Mr. Kennedy is now at. All right. Hopefully you realize he is now in position 3. The first thing you need to do is you need to add the darkness side of the moon. Remember, the light is over there at the windows. So go ahead and add your darkness. Did you put the darkness all on this side? If you did, that was smart. Now, color the light that's in front yellow and the light that is behind orange. Your picture should now look like this. Put cousin onto the worksheet and have his eyes or her eyes look at the moon. Who has the view? On your worksheet, you see that whoever has the view who's sitting right here. In my class, that is the people who are sitting back here at this table. They have the view of the duck. By the way, the middle table should have moved the eyes of the duck to look at the moon. We always look at the moon from the dark side. Now, let's look at this moon from the vantage point of the people who are sitting at that point in the room. Now, the first thing you notice is this. I want you to answer me a question. Take a guess what you think this one's called. Most people screw up. And they call it a half moon. This is weird, right? It looks like half the moon's lit. Why is it not called a half moon? Well, it's not called a half moon because if you look at the moon, right now, Mr. Kenny's going to take my cousin and he's going to put him on the front side of the moon. You can see him standing there on the lit side of the moon. But if Mr. Kennedy brings him behind You can now no longer see him, even though he's still standing in the light. Is he still standing in the light, Mr. Kennedy?
Oh, yeah.
But you can't see him. So he's standing on the half that's lit that you can't see, that's behind the orbit line. So you're seeing half of a half. The half you're seeing is in front. The half you can't see is in behind. Of in math class means multiply. 1/2 times 1/2 is a fourth. Another name for a fourth, ladies and gentlemen, is a quarter. And so this is called a first quarter or a waxing quarter. All right? That is what this one's called. So when it looks like it's a half, it's called, again, a waxing or a first quarter. Let's have you rotate, Mr. Kennedy. Let's figure out what position Mr. Kennedy is now in. Mr. Kennedy is over here. And if you're on your worksheet, hopefully you realize that he just went over here to number what? 4. Color the darkness first. When you color the darkness, you end up with that. And again, if you look here, you can see that we now have 1, 2, 3 of these that are in front. One of them is behind of the light. We color that orange. And who has the view? Well, put cousin there. Rotate cousin's eyes around to see the moon. Who has that view? Right over here. Let's give the duck the same view. And you notice in my room that this is actually a spot where I don't have anybody sitting. But maybe for class today, I moved a couple of people for social distancing, and maybe somebody's over there. So let's look at this moon. Let's check it out. Now you see something weird. Notice on waxing, all the light has been on the right. Light from the right is waxing. All right, so remember that rhymes. Now, what I want you to notice is that on the left, Mr. Pencil is saying, look at that. Look at the left. All right, look at the left. Do you see the left? There is a shape that we've already learned on the left. That shape is called a crescent. There's a crescent of darkness. Now, on the right, you see a shape that most of you don't know the name of this shape, but the light you see is actually called a gibbous. And a gibbous is when you actually see 3 out of the 4 pieces of light. And it looks like this. If you look, I made a sliver of darkness, dark, on the left, and then you see 1, 2, you see 1, 2, 3 pieces of light. That 3/4 shape of light of the moon is known as a gibbous. What is it known as, everybody? Let's practice saying that. Gibbous. Good job. You learned a new word and a new shape. When 3/4 is lit, it's called a what? That's right, a gibbous. Let's have Mr. Kennedy rotate. Mr. Kennedy is rotating. Where is Mr. Kennedy now at on your sheet? We'll pause the video, hopefully you're saying. Let's rotate the view of the duck. Let's put your cousin on the sheet. And let's figure out which moon you're looking at. Hopefully you've now realized that Mr. Kennedy is standing in position 5. Color your darkness first. Remember, for the light, you're going to go ahead and color the light that is in front of the line yellow, behind the line black. Hopefully you're doing this accurately as we're doing it. And now let's see what this looks like so we can draw what it looks like. So who has the view of the duck right now? Hopefully you picked the kids who are sitting right over here at table 4. All right. Now on your sheet, remember that those people are actually on where the box 1 is on your worksheet. But in class, it's my table 4. And let's look at what they see. This is what those people see. And you can see that the entire thing we see is light. So what is this one called? What do you think that one's called? Most kids know the name of this one. That's right. It's called a full moon. So when the moon is full, we are done waxing. We are done waxing when the moon is full. So now there's this wonderful new term. When the light is full, we are actually only seeing half of the moon. This is not called a half moon. It's called a full moon. And some kids say, well, if that other one was called a quarter, why isn't this one called a half? This one is not named, all right? It's not named by its how much of the light you're seeing. It's named by the shape you're seeing. So of the light, the shape you're seeing is you're seeing full light of that circle. And so when you see all the light on a side, it's called the full moon. We always name the light. That's going to be important when we start to take the light away. Now, what's interesting is you can wax a moon, but you can't have Mr. Kenny, fake Mr. Kenny, act like you start going back the other way. We are not going to do this. This is not what the moon does. The moon doesn't start going back to go to the next phase. What we're going to do is we're going to bring him back where he was. And what's going to happen is Mr. Kennedy's going to move to the next position. Now, remember, Mr. Kennedy is moving counterclockwise. What position is he now standing in? Well, hopefully you can figure out that he's now standing in position 6. Rotate your pencil, Mr. Cousin on there. Put your cousin and have him look. Who has the view? We'll rotate the duck's eyes so that the duck can see the moon. Who has the view of the duck? Well, we're going to come right over here and we're going to see that the people who have the view of the duck are the people who are sitting right here at table 3. Now, remember on your worksheet, there's a 2 on that spot. But in my classroom, that's the people who are sitting at desk 3. So now let's look. This is where it gets a little bit weird. What we do now is we've added all the light we can add. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to start to add darkness. And that means that the light is starting to get less. And the word in English, Mr. Kennedy, do you know a word for when light gets less?
Maybe it starts to wane?
It starts to what?
Wane a little bit?
Oh, high five.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Kennedy. It starts to wane. So if we look at this, we now see there's a sliver of darkness on the right. Now, this is weird. Last time when we added light from the right. Now we're adding darkness from the right. So waning is when we don't add light, but we add darkness from the right. Everything's getting added from the right. Now, what happens is when we add that sliver of darkness, which looks like what shape, everybody? Mr. Ken, did you learn the name of that shape?
Well, I think we did.
Yeah, what was the name of that shape?
The crescent?
Oh, Mr. Pencil, this is a good student. He's a very smart kid. And so that's a crescent, and we have on the left that shape we just learned, and that shape, everybody, is called a gibbous. So this is called a waning gibbous. Let's come back over here and let's look at your picture and see if you got your picture right. And when you look at your picture here, all right, we still colored our darkness on the left. We've got 1, 2, 3, and we've got this orange behind the orbit line. Put cousin here. Now this is where you got to get creative. If you don't get creative, what it looks like is you go, Mr. Pencil, you're going to be tempted to say I'm wrong. Because I just told you the light's on the left, and you're like, no, it's not. It's on the right. But what you got to do is you got to give Mr. Pencil, your cousin, the view, and you got to spin your paper. And when you spin your paper around so that you have the view of me on the paper, which is why my cousins are so valuable. They can stand on the worksheet. And when you look across, you see 1, 2, 3 on the left, and you see one sliver of darkness on the right. So when we actually draw this on our paper, the mistake would be if you drew the gibbous shape. If you drew that gibbous shape right there, if you drew that gibbous shape on the right, it would be wrong. So the sliver is on the right of darkness. And we have 1, 2, 3 pieces. And this is called a waning gibbous. Everybody say that, waning gibbous. Very good. Now we're going to rotate the moon. Dun, dun, dun. Feel like that Price is Right when when they're climbing up the mountain. So he's now in what position, everybody? He's standing in position. Hopefully you're starting to get the hang of this. He's in position 7 on your worksheet. Who has the view of that? Hopefully you said the people who are in position 3, which in my room is desk 2. The duck has now got his view. He's looking up at the moon. And what we see now, if we come over here and look at it, is now we have added more darkness. So it's waned some more. And it's waned some more on the right. Now we have half we see, but it's half of a half. So this is called the waning quarter or the last quarter. And so we're going to look at your sheet. And on your sheet, when you're drawing it, it should look like this. When it's drawing it, it looks like this. Put cousin there. Cousin, in order to see that, there's a bell that's ringing in my video. Sorry about that. But there we go. We're looking at it. Now the light's on the left. So when we go to draw this in our box, we want to draw it on the left. And again, this is called a waning quarter or the last quarter. So for those of you who are like, Mr. Pencil, you're wrong. The light's on the right. No, remember, if I'm looking at it from over here and I'm looking up at the moon from over here, the light is on the left. So this is why when you're trying to figure this out, before you draw the picture, you actually got to give yourself the view of cousin standing on the sheet. Ladies and gentlemen, let's have him rotate to our last position on our sheet. Where is he going, folks? Hopefully you've got him at position 8. Let's see if you can do everything right on this without any help from me in class. Hopefully the people at the desk have oriented the duck. Hopefully the kids in the room that are sitting in the right spot have raised their hand. Should be the people who are sitting over here at table 1. On your worksheet, remember, this would be the people who are in position 4, which is table 1 in my room. So we're going to come over here and we're going to look at this moon. And what we see here is now we see that sliver. Mr. Kenny, can you hold it up a little higher? Because it's, oh, there we go. You see a little sliver of light on the left, which is that shape. Remember, we name the light. So we see on the right, we see that gibbous of darkness on the right. We see on the left a sliver of light. If we name the light, we're going to call this, all right, our last one. And the last one that this is called a waning crescent. And so this is what it should look like. You should have had one piece colored here with cousin that's yellow, 3 that are orange that are behind the orbit line. And now, if you notice on the sheet here, we're going to have Mr. Kennedy there. He's going to come back to the original position here. And we're back to new. And when we get back to new, we start all over again. By the way, it takes 29.5 days to get back to new. Now, some of you are like, Mr. Callahan told us in the book, or you're saying the book told us it was 27.3 days. Well, what's weird is it does take 27.3 days for the moon to go around the Earth, counterclockwise. But one other thing that's weird is that in the time it took to go around the Earth has also moved around the sun. And it's moved around the sun enough that it takes an extra almost 2.5 days. We're going to pause there to let that bell. Sorry about that bell. But it takes the Earth 2.5 more days for the moon to catch back up to that new moon position. So even though it only takes 27.3 days to actually go around, but to get back to that position, because the Earth also moved around the sun, it takes 2.5 more days for a total of 29.5 basically days to get through the whole thing. And this is why the phases of the moon don't occur on the same time. Also, really something really amazing is that you didn't know, but I'm going to try to have Mr. Kennedy show us this too. You only see, let's have Mr. Kennedy come back across to the full moon position over here. Let's have him come across to the full moon position. One of the things that's really funny about the moon is that the moon, you only ever see this side of the moon. And that's because something's weird about the moon. And that's this. It takes the moon the same amount of time to orbit the Earth as it does for the moon to rotate on its axis. Mr. Kennedy, can you slowly rotate that moon on the axis? Keep going. You might have to spin it on your hand. I don't think your hand's going to twist all the way around there. Keep going, sir. Keep going. Keep going. There you go. One more grab. Re-grab. In real life, that takes 29.5 days for the moon to do that. And so we never see what's called the dark side of the moon. Nobody ever saw the dark side of the moon until we went to the moon. All right. It's not that there's never light on the dark side of the moon. There is, but the side that's facing us is always the same. By the way, this is what your completed sheet should look like. If you need to pause it and get it done, that's what it looks like. Always remember that we name the moons from the light shape. Remember that waxing, the light is added on the right. Waning, the darkness is added on the right. So we got waxing and waning, we got new, and we got full. I hope you enjoyed me teaching you the phases of the moon. You be kind to my cousins, because they tell me when you treat them poorly. You've seen the movie Toy Story. You know I'm telling the truth. Have a good day. Science is awesome.